We are live. Welcome to Renegade podcast. I'm your host, a dashing rogue. I'm with my frequent psychic, artistic layman.
Good morning, terrifying fantasy world.
Good morning.
Nice. Any case, also with a prior guest that I had on before, Lloyd De Jongh. How are you doing?
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me on again. It's good to chat with you guys.
Yeah, I've been watching and following your channel. Link will be in the description at the end of the video. You've been doing a lot of good research when it comes to Islam, as well as debunking a lot of these talking points about the Talmud. That a lot of these, whether they be people who don't know any better or have malicious intent, you've been debunking a lot of the claims. I've taken notice to that. It's very good work. It's very factual, very accurate. It's very useful, especially in these times. And I wanna encourage anybody to look up his apologetics. I believe you did with I believe it was Sonia and
Thaddeus on the channel Reasoned Answers Apologetics.
Yes, he does a very good. I think at one point you stated. Again, I'm just gonna. You don't have to explain here. You can go look it up if you want, guys. That on Thaddeus's and Sonia's apologetics about, I believe it was you saying something along the lines of Muhammad swimming in urine. I believe. I'm taking it totally out of context here, but I know you did something.
No, this was Muhammad who was washing himself, which was doing a ritual cleaning. Who was basically doing a ritual cleansing in filthy water where there were dead dogs, menstrual rags were thrown, and apparently garbage and feces were thrown into. Oh. And he then makes the claim that nothing makes water impure.
Yes, I remember that.
Wow. Link will be in the description to that as well if you guys want to watch it. Because again, there's a lot of stuff out there that is just, you have to look this stuff up to figure it out because they're not going to tell you.
I can actually show you there's a variety of hadith to that effect of what's called Sahih or authentic hadith to that effect, and I've collected them all together. But yeah, it's actually very common.
Wow. I'm totally ignorant towards Islam other than what they're doing. I've talked about the actions of individuals, and I don't really look at the ideology of the individuals behind the actions oftentimes because
Yeah, look, we don't want to talk about individuals necessarily, but we can talk about ideas, and Islam is an ideology. It's a set of ideas. Now, those ideas, though, if you are expressed through their major scholars. Now, people only know the Quran, but the Quran it's been abrogated. In other words, much of it has been cancelled. So I discussed that in my most recent video on the Reasoned Answers Apologetics channel, where the bulk of the Quran has been cancelled. Very little of it is still applicable. And where you really find... So the Quran is really not where Islam is found. If you want to find Islam's meanings and definitions, its rulings, you have to look in what's called the Hadith, which form part of the Sunnah, and you really have to look in what's called the Tafsir, which is the scholarly writings, as well as finally in the Sharia. The Sharia is the final word. You can use the Quran to argue literally any side of an argument. They always quote, "Let there be no compulsion in religion," which is Quran 2:256. But that was abrogated or cancelled by the verse Quran 3:85, which says, "Whoever wants a religion other than Islam, never will it be accepted of him." And that is affirmed in the Sharia, which is the final word.
Interesting. Yeah, that's again, there's a lot of stuff that people just don't know about Islam. They either don't know or they weren't taught or they've been deceived. So I find it very interesting.
Well, Islam also, but if you read the Sharia, which is where Islam is really found, it's tafsir and it's Sharia. In fact, the Sharia is really made up of what is called the exegesis by the major scholars, or the interpretations of the major scholars. So that's tafsir, as well as the fatwa by the major scholars, and these are binding fatwa. They will quote you various muftis that said those are non-binding fatwa, you can ignore. Those are optional. But the Sharia is made up of binding fatwa and the tafsir. And also, it teaches in the Sharia that, for instance, that they have to hate the Jews, and ultimately they must kill all the Jews to bring back the end times. And also, they must hate Christians and hate Christianity, and that the Bible is corrupted and that we are worshiping the Antichrist, that our Jesus is the Antichrist.
Interesting. Yeah, this is coming from the group of people.
Maybe even more chilling, of the deleterious influence that Muhammad's example has upon the Islamic world was exemplified recently by an Egyptian leader of a radical Muslim party who wrote just recently that he couldn't believe that the beheadings in Iraq were being protested by Muslims. Weren't they aware that the Prophet Muhammad himself beheaded between 600 and 900 men personally, members of the Jewish Qurayza tribe in Arabia, after he had defeated them? Didn't they realize that if the Prophet did it, then this was the proper way to behave?
Yeah, well, if the Prophet did it, but even then, like nobody in this day and age, I think, Luke, can go around acting like Muhammad, because they'd be war crimes.
ISIS did.
Yeah.
ISIS was 100% authentic Islam, following the Sharia to the letter. And also, when Robert Spencer there says men, what they did was they dropped the pants of everyone there, and then if anyone had a little bit of pubic hair, they were killed. In other words, boys from the age of 11 upwards.
Jesus Christ, that's insane. Wow.
Although from the positive side, he murdered all the men of the tribe. He then sold the children into slavery and handed the women out to his companions as sex slaves. And he took the leader of the tribe's wife as his wife, which he married that same day and then had sex with her that night. And don't forget that sex in Islam is defined as legal sexual legal sexual relations. There is no romantic context. It's lawful. And so what Muhammad does, anything he does, is lawful. And she then poisoned him the next day by feeding him poisoned lamb, from which he then suffered for the next 3 or 4 years. And ultimately he died. And there's a really interesting story attached to that further.
Wow. So I had you on specifically to go talk more into the Talmud, but also how Islam is deceiving Christians. Now, I wanted, but before we continue in that, you said something about fatwa. I always thought fatwa was a hit on someone's head, like Steven Crowder has a hit on his head.
The world got to know about fatwa because of the satanic verses by Salman Rushdie.
Yeah, that guy.
That was back in the 80s. So he wrote a book discussing, so Muhammad was deceived by Satan. Satan got him to worship the pagan goddesses of the pagan tribes. And this was obviously an offense to Allah, who then sent Gabriel, who admonished him. And even the Quran says that no prophet was ever innocent of being lied to by Satan. There's no proof of that biblically, but they have to make that claim to defend Muhammad, because Muhammad then, he says, for instance, Allah says to him, if you lie about me, I will cut you a orta. And I can show you all the references, but what happens is when Muhammad is poisoned, when he dies from the poison, he says, I feel as if my orta is being cut. He says this multiple times. So he's then killed by Allah the way that Allah predicts he will kill him, for being a false prophet.
Wow. Wow.
In Islamic theology, the Prophet Muhammad is considered al-insan al-kamil, which is the perfect man. He is the model par excellence to be imitated. He is the person that the more a Muslim is like him, the better off he is. So the Prophet Muhammad is revered today in the Islamic world as the primary model of human behavior.
Okay, since we're talking about him, then perhaps I can share my screen and I can show you guys something.
Sure. Can you let him share his screen?
Well, I mean, I could be selective about it if you want. I can show what I can transfer that image over.
Okay.
Yeah, I see there's a share screen option here for me.
Let's see. Let's give him that access, Luke. We trust him. He's been on the show a couple times.
Let's see.
Because you're talking about Muhammad, I've been preparing a slide on, I've been preparing notes specifically to do a video on Muhammad himself. It's not 100% finished, but quite a lot of it is. So it's fine enough for me to show you and just walk my way through it.
Sure,
so you guys can learn a little bit more about Muhammad.
Yeah, however you can share your screen, you're welcome to.
Yeah.
Apparently it is now sharing.
Oh,
awesome.
I see your screen right now, I think. Where your desktop.
I see it. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Let me just, maybe I should just make this full screen like this. Yeah,
That's
unfortunately, yeah, a lot of it's going to be blank, unless should I leave it as it is?
You could. That's fine. That's
How-
fine. It will work.
It's easy for me to read it like this, to be honest.
Yeah, go ahead. You do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Okay, so for instance, okay, so I'm busy preparing notes for a video called Muhammad, Partner of Allah. So, as you know, this is Muhammad with Aisha. Now, Muhammad forms part of a trinity with Allah and the Quran. It is in the Sharia, and I can go through that later, where worship of Allah is invalid, and in fact, it has no effect. It is worthless unless you also acknowledge Muhammad. To believe in Allah alone is insufficient to be a Muslim. Your prayers and your devotion is completely nullified. Muhammad is critical. Without him, there is no Islam. So now we are taught in Islam that Allah has no partner. However, Muhammad is his partner. That's not a typo. I wrote that deliberately. Now, Muhammad is his partner because, as I said, the Sharia tells us explicitly. Now, only Allah is eternal and has always existed. These are statements from Islam. These are their beliefs. However, the Quran is also eternal and has always existed, which is a contradiction of their own doctrine. Only Allah is perfect. However, the Quran is perfect. And also, the Hadith tell us that Allah has two right hands.
He has two right hands.
He has two right hands. Yeah. In fact, the two halves of his body are both the right side of the body. So yes, I know. I'm not kidding you. You can see this in Sunan an-Nasai 49:1 and Sahih Muslim 18:27. Muhammad is also the perfect man, as we were told. In fact, you are not allowed to believe that Muhammad is less than perfect. That is blasphemy in Islam. So now Muhammad had head lice, and we'll get to this, living in his hair. Muhammad had to have lice picked out of his hair. And Aisha, his 6-year-old wife, cleaned semen from his clothes. This is the perfect man.
He's a Coomer. Wow.
So Islam is Muhammad. This is the city of Taif. I've been to Taif, actually, in Saudi Arabia. And this is them fishing. You're going to have to widen that. That screen is very...
I'm trying to get position just right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So what is this we're looking at?
Quran's fished out of a drain in Taif, Saudi Arabia. The police are actually on this case.
Oh, what? All those Quran? Oh, they're little Qurans?
Yes, those are Qurans.
Why are they in the drain? What happened?
Yeah. Okay, there's fine now. Now, the Shahada, I'll run through this very fast because I'll be making a video on this. And I thought we'd be talking more about Judaism and the Talmud, but let's do this. So the Shahada is the testification of faith, right? That there's no God but Allah and that Muhammad is his partner. I've scratched out messenger because Muhammad is certainly his partner, because Islam is invalid without Muhammad. In fact, even Allah is invalid without Muhammad. So the Shahada with Muhammad is not found in the Quran. It is nowhere in the Quran. So
it's not prophet, it's partner? Or is it? So it's like it's
no. I'm saying that. No, they say he's messenger. They say he's prophet, but it is his partner because you see, it is blasphemy to claim that Allah has partners,
right?
But Allah has no value without Muhammad. Your worship is useless without Muhammad. If you don't believe in Muhammad, then there's no point believing in Allah. You had it perfect. You've just obscured the screen again. So let's talk through this. So if you look at chapter U2 of the world's most popular Sharia manual, and I can provide links to that. You can look at that. Islam, it says, Islam is to testify that there's no God but Allah and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. Now, this is in the Sharia, which is written by a group of at least 25 men. So the Sharia, the law of Islam, the entire corpus of law and the practice of Islam is written by a committee of men. It is not found in the Quran at all, because the Quran is about 150,000 words. It's smaller than the New Testament. A copy of the Sharia can set you back 3,000 or 4,000 pages, right? So you're looking at a short 200-page book versus, or 150-page book versus a book with several thousand pages. That is the Sharia. And the Shahada is not found in the Quran at all, right? This came later, that Muhammad was his prophet. So Now, he says here, Allah has favored him above all other prophets and made him the highest of mankind. So they do say that, all right? And also notice it says here that Muhammad was sent to deliver his message to the entire world, Arabs and non-Arabs, superseding and abrogating all previous religious systems with Sharia, with the sacred law. So Islam abrogates all religions. And also we have, yes, it does.
Wow. Wow.
No, I can show you the
That's a
references in the Sharia.
That's a very vivid way of putting it. Wow.
No, they make it very blunt. In section W4, I'll get to that later, I can show you, but they state that bluntly. All other religions are cancelled, are null and void. In fact, Christianity and Judaism especially are what they call din al-batil. Batil means null and void, worthless, as in something that has absolutely no effect, something that doesn't even exist.
Wow.
So Islam has replaced this. Now, Muhammad is to be obeyed like Allah. The Quran demands 91 times that Muslims imitate Muhammad in every way. These commands take two types, historical and direct commands. So now, the Meccan Quran is filled with examples of previous messengers who had to be obeyed, or Allah punished them. Moses is a historical example. However, Moses is regarded as the highest of the prophets. Then we have Muhammad, and of course Jesus is just a prophet, and Moses is held above Jesus, and Muhammad is held above Moses.
You
The reason
said,
is, yeah.
Just to get in there, you said the Meccan Quran. Is there multiple Qurans out there now?
So
Or is
there were two phases in Islam, the early and the late phase. In the early phase, he was in Mecca. We had no power. He was just a religious leader. In 13 years, he only managed to secure less than 150 followers. No one
Also
believed him.
changes with the establishment of Muhammad's theocratic statelet in the city of Medina. He becomes
Luke.
a warlord, he becomes the head of a totalitarian state, he becomes very rich, very powerful, and very intolerant. And then many of these early verses, in fact, get abrogated.
In Surah 2, verse 106 of the Quran, it says, or
Luke.
Allah says, I should say, that if we abrogate, we being Allah, abrogate a verse, then we'll give you one that's better.
Okay,
There
so
it is.
yeah, Luke. As much as I enjoy that, as much as I enjoy your sound effects, can we like limit it a bit on this one? Let Lloyd this show, because again, I don't know if that's similar, if that has anything to do with it. I'm letting Lloyd take the
That
wheel.
is the abrogation of the Quran. So most of the verses of the Quran are abrogated. So all of the peaceful verses, because Islam is revealed in stages. So Muhammad was first a religious leader, then a political leader, then a military leader. Once he became a military leader, he then abrogated all of the previous peaceful statements. And that's what's in the Medinan Quran, where the violence begins. The Bible goes, for instance, from descriptions of violence in the Old Testament to the peace of the New Testament. The Quran is the opposite way around.
Interesting.
For instance, I will drop this in, and you'll see here. This is from the Sharia. So I'm going to pop this on the left-hand side of that. Can you just make that full screen? Because I have two windows open now. I've covered the entire screen.
All right.
So I'm going to enlarge my screen so everyone can see this.
So
Hang on.
okay, so what is it that we're looking at here?
This is the Sharia. Now, there are multiple... Okay, you're going to have to slide over to the left a little bit. So, the Sharia is law. It is all the law of Islam. Islam's a legal system. More than anything else, it is a legal system. Everything is subject to the law. They wanted to supplant Moses's, what they call the Sharia of Moses, the Moses 613 laws, the law of Moses. So they are even far more nitpicky than the Jews can ever be. So this section here is called the finality of the Prophet's message, section W4.0. This is the world's most popular, most sold, and most authentic, most authenticated Sharia manual. Anyone can download this as a PDF. It is called the Reliance of the Traveler, or Umdat al-Salik in the original Arabic. But it's been translated and it's been available for 2 decades or more now. And it says here, previously revealed religions were valid in their own eras, as attested by verses of the Quran, but were abrogated by the universal message of Islam. They speak of erroneous theories affirming these religions' validity, but deny or do not mention their abrogation. and that it is unbelief to hold that the remnant cults now bearing the names of formerly valid religions, such as Christianity or Judaism, are acceptable to Allah after he sent Muhammad. This is a matter of which there is no disagreement among Islamic scholars. Islam is the final religion that will never be abrogated. According to Islamic belief, the Christianity and Judaism have been abrogated and replaced. They are the original replacement theology.
Wow.
Oh boy.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Wow!
That is.
Yeah. Go on.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
This is the final word. There is no arguing with the Sharia. It is the. See, as I said, the Quran is. You can argue any side of the argument from the Quran, really, and people do. The Sharia is definitive. It comes down on one side very clearly and distinctly, and this message is clear. This is the law.
Interesting. So, I think we were talking at some point in this conversation about them wanting to bring about the end times, the end of the world. They wanted to kill all the Jews and what have you. But again, from what I understand, it seems like these are the real people. Like everyone who complains about Judaism, the Noahide laws, Judaism, Talmud, all these lies. These people actually have the ability to lie. They have the ability to lie, and it's acceptable to lie because they see us Christians and some of us out there who may be followers of Judaism. They see us as backwards people. They think they're better than us, so they can lie because it makes them better. Because I don't know.
Okay, so there are multiple different forms of lying in Islam. Right? Actually,
this will be interesting.
let me actually go to. Let me actually find my notes. I think this will be, here we go. So I've got a section here called Sacred Lying and Holy Deception. So I'm just going to, you can see this on the right-hand side of the screen. You are, I think, slicing it off slightly, but to the right. So these are the Islamic doctrines of deceit that we can verify. There's taqiyya. Now they'll say that is something the Shia do. However, it is not true. It is referenced by name in the Sunni books as well. Although in the Sunni, it is also sometimes called mudarat, which is that here. And it is termed calculated deceit for the purposes of spreading Islam. Right? That's according to the scholar Ibn Taymiyyah. Kitman, which is deceit by silence or omission, or lying by omission. An example is when Muslim apologists will quote only a fragment of the Quran verse 532 that if anyone kills, it shall be as if he had killed all mankind, while neglecting to mention that the rest of the verse and the next verse mandate murder in undefined cases of corruption and mischief. And in this case, specifically, that corruption and mischief refers to tempting Muslims away from Islam, leading them to other faiths. And the punishments that they levy are cutting off their hands and feet from opposite sides of the body or crucifying them.
God.
There is tawriya, deceit by ambiguity. For instance, when someone knocks on your door and says, "Is your mom here?" the little boy will go down because his mom sends him, and his mom says, "Tell him I'm not here." Then he'll say, "No, my mom is not here." Meaning, in his mind, that my mom is not here, standing between you and me. That's tawriya. So she's in the house, but she's not here in front of us. So when he says, "My mom is not here," that's what he means. Taysir is deceit through facilitation, not having to observe all of the tenets of the Sharia, so they can eat pork and do other things. There's darura, deceit through necessity, to engage in something haram or forbidden to basically allay suspicion or to gain trust. There is maruna, which is blending in, temporary suspension of Sharia, so that they can appear moderate. And the final one, which is not spoken about, which is actually the most critical form of deceit, even more so than taqiyya in Islam, is called hiyal. Hiyal is it's a form of legal trickery. It is a way that the Islamic scholars developed in the early 800s already. It was finalized in the early 800s, in the 9th century, as a way to circumvent every single Islamic law, to get around it. Even though you technically are following the law to the letter, you can break every single law and break every promise and every treaty in Islam. So it is known as contortion, contrivance, device, or subterfuge. It is legalistic trickery, and there are hundreds of these methods that exist to break every single Islamic law.
So it's basically sophistry. They're basically, using legalese. They're I guess if would you say this is the spirit of the law or the letter of the law that they're trying to bypass?
They abide by the letter. They break the spirit. So they can break any oath, break any contract. It is a means of breaking. Now, don't forget Islam. For instance, when you say the Shahada, when you commit, that is called bayah. You are actually, technically, you're signing a contract. So when you leave Islam, you are breaking your contract, and the penalty for breaking the contract is death. Everything in Islam is legalistic. Every single thing is based on the law.
Yeah, and people say that, again, I just find it interesting that, everyone goes, like, I wanted to go, we originally were going to go into the to the notion of how Christians can be deceived by Islam, but I really wanted to go over some of these talking points again, so people know where we're coming from and why I would immediately start going after Islam. I've only had you on once before, Lloyd, and I wanted to give people a refresher. So I think we can start going into deception of Christians and Jews and other faiths by Islam, if you want.
You mentioned something about the Jews in the end times. Like, let me just quote a couple of quotes here.
Okay.
So this is something I normally say to people, but for instance, if you read now the Tafsir, I mentioned that earlier, those are the major scholars and their interpretation of the Quran and their explanations of Islamic ideology. So, for instance, it says by Tafsir Ibn Kathir, who is extremely famous and influential in Islam, talking about verse 9:30, he says, fighting the Jews and the Christians is legislated in the Sharia, that is what they mean, because they are idolaters and disbelievers. Allah the Exalted encourages the Muslims to fight the polytheists, the disbelieving Jews and Christians who uttered this terrible statement, utter lies against Allah. They claim that the Bible has been corrupted, that the Jews and the Christians, the leaders, collaborated to hide the original Bible. Then they rewrote the Bible and they falsified Jesus because Muhammad had said that the Quran comes to affirm the Bible and that they are in perfect agreement. Of course, when people actually read the Quran and the Muslims read the Bible, they discovered that this was not the case. So the Muslims decided, well, then the Bible was false. So they claim that the Jews said that Uzair, whoever that guy is the son of God. There is no such claim made anywhere in the Bible. And as for the misguidance of Christians over Jesus, now this is Esau. This is not Yeshua. This is Esau. And they claim this is Jesus, but it is not. It's a Gnostic Jesus taken from two heretical Gnostic scriptures, documents. The one is the Arabic infancy gospel of Thomas, and the other one is the Israelite gospel of Thomas, which are two Gnostic gospels. So their version of Jesus comes purely out of Gnostic heretical documents. And they say over Jesus, it is obvious. This is why Allah declared both groups to be liars. So they declare us to be liars, that we've defrauded the Bible, that we worship a Christ who is actually the Antichrist. We refuse to worship the correct Jesus, who is a Muslim, just like Moses was a Muslim, Abraham, David, and all the other prophets were Muslims. And Jesus came to declare that Muhammad would arrive, and that when Muhammad comes back, Jesus will worship as a Muslim behind Muhammad.
That is pretty dark shit. That's some really dark crap. That's very...
Yeah, so let me show you one or two different... I want to find a specific... Okay, so I want to do two more. This one is from the biography of Muhammad. This is called the Sirat Rasul Allah. So this is the biography of Muhammad. The most famous one of which is by Guillaume, written by a man called Guillaume. And this is on page 369. It is paragraph 554. And it says here, the apostle, that's Muhammad, said, kill any Jew that falls into your power. Thereupon Muhayyisa leapt upon Ibn Sunayna, a Jewish merchant with whom they had social and business relations, and killed him. Now, this story goes on to say that his brother, this Muslim man's brother, tries to pull him off, tries to stop him from murdering the Jew whom he kills. And then he says to him, why would you do that? This man has been our friend and our neighbor for years. And he says, because Muhammad told me to do it. And if Muhammad had told me to murder you, my brother, I would have done this too. And his brother says, any religion that can make you do such a thing is marvelous. And he converts to Islam.
That's a cult of personality right there. I mean,
Yep.
it really does seem like Islam is a cult of personality,
It
but
is.
with legalism behind it.
It is, and then the final one is, for instance, this is from Sahih Muslim, a hadith, and it says here, and this is repeated by other scholars, and it's in the Sharia, and it's all over these scholarly works. The last hour, which is in other words, this is at Armageddon, the second coming. The last hour would not come unless the Muslims will fight against the Jews and the Muslims would kill them until the Jews hide behind stones and trees, and the stones and the trees will say, Muslim, the servant of Allah, there is a Jew behind me. Come and kill him. So
That
lots of people, you know,
that is very, very, that's very dark. I mean, it sounds like Nazi Germany almost. And you and I you've been on here before, and again, shameless plug, but we talked about how the SS officers, such as the I think it was it's not the Death's Head Division. What was it?
okay, let me show you. Let's look up something very simple. I'm simply going to look up Grand Mufti of Jerusalem.
Okay.
Right, so now I'm using Bing, and I'm just going to look up Grand Mufti of Jerusalem on Bing, and I'm going to click on images. Now let's look and see. Look at these images. I just typed in Grand Mufti of Jerusalem. Look here. This is the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem sitting with Hitler.
Yep.
This is him with Heinrich Himmler, the number 2 man in the Nazi Reich. This is him with his SS division giving the Nazi salute. Here he is again with his SS troops. And these fezzes have death's heads on them. This is him with Hitler shaking hands. This is him walking with the SS troops. Nazi salute. This is him with Heinrich Himmler again. This is him visiting his troops, talking to Hitler. So when you look up Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, the first 50 images are just with him because he joined the Nazis voluntarily. He raised the largest Nazi fighting force. He ultimately raised, the Nazi SS had a division of over 30,000 men called the Hanja that were very busy murdering anyone they could, including Jews. And of course, they also fought in Africa against the Allies. So he was someone who very much influenced Hitler and fought because he liked Hitler, because Hitler was killing Jews. And in fact, he probably was the one who helped Hitler in deciding how to kill them. For instance, I'll give you one thing. You know in Islam that when they conquer your territory, they will give you 3 choices. Become a Muslim, become a dhimmi, a semi-slave, and sign the contract of the dhimmi, or kill you, right? Hitler had the same 3 stipulations for people they conquered. Either you become Germanized, or you become a slave and work for them, or they kill you.
Wow, that is something. That is something else, man. I mean, it's again we covered this before, but again to reiterate, I really do think that there is going to be a lot of I've seen a lot of hatred towards the Jews as of late. A lot of I would even say it's one thing to be skeptical of Judaism. I was skeptical of Judaism, and I've learned better now. I've learned that that they're not as evil. They're not evil. Okay, they're not an evil. Judaism is not an evil religion. Not like Islam. Islam is an evil religion. I would put it.
Well, let me show you. Okay, so hold on. Since we're on this subject, let me show you. This is from the Sharia, the same book that I had earlier, except this is the same book, the Umdat al-Salik. I will go to the beginning so people can just see this one. I'm going to shift this over. This is called The Reliance of the Traveler, the classic manual of Islamic sacred law, Umdat al-Salik. As I said, it is the most popular, the most famous Sharia manual in the world. And this is the same book, except it's been redone in neater text, easier to read. And it says here that to be a Muslim, you must believe in all the books that came before the Quran and all the prophets. However, it does say here the obligation of belief applies to the original revelations. This is the Sharia. Remember, there is no arguing with the Sharia, not the scriptures in the hands of non-Muslims, which are textually corrupt in their present form. They make the claim, Muslims are taught from the age of 5 when they go to madrasa that the Bible is corrupt. Muslims have the accurate scriptures, and all of the Christian and Jewish scriptures are corrupted and false.
That is scary. That is very scary.
Yeah, what's interesting is they have to believe in all of the prophets. It is obligatory to know 25 particular messengers: Adam, Enoch, Noah, Lot, Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, and so on. Except these are all Jews, and they believe that a Jewish Messiah will come back, fight the Jews, kill the Jews, break the cross, force the Christians to convert to Islam, and then he will worship behind Muhammad.
Oh God.
That's Jesus.
This really, I could sort of see why a lot of evangelical Christians, who, whether it's like the Left Behind series, they talk about the false prophet, and oftentimes whenever they try to blend in, real world events that are happening at the time, like modern events, to Christian I guess it's a apocalypse literature, they could sort of see this narrative be playing out almost because it just fits so well. They're almost like an antichrist religion. They really are.
They are specifically anti-Christian. They are specifically anti-Christian. They are most definitely a complete inversion. As I was showing you earlier, let me just go through some of this, and I can show you some more of this, and then we can get into some of the Talmudic stuff. Let me just mention here. Actually, skip the stuff on Muhammad. Let me go to this. These are two of the major scholarly works. These are polemics, which are basically scathing rhetorical works, and very, very false rhetorical works written to supposedly refute Christianity. However, these are attacks on the Bible, attacks on Christian belief, and attacks on Jesus. These are two men. One is Ibn Qayyim, and another one is Ibn Taymiyyah. These are two of the major scholars. Ibn Taymiyyah is regarded as a Sheikh al-Islam. He's one of 24 Islamic scholars who are regarded as the elite of the Islamic scholars, right? And he talks about Nazarene. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Why do they call him the Nazarene? I've only seen that being used once.
Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus of Nazareth.
But is the Nazarene I don't want to focus too much about this because I have to do more research into it, because I've only seen that be used one other time, and that was with a gentleman by the name of David Myrat. I've spoken about him before on my channel. He was a white nationalist, but then turned into a Muslim, and then he became a Satanist at one point, and he calls a lot of he's used the term Nazarene before. So it's interesting that I see that pop up again.
Yeah, they have names for us, and we are Nazarenes. See, because Jesus of Nazareth is a false creation, and their Jesus, which is taken, as I said, from the Israelite Gospel of Thomas and the Arabic Infancy Gospel of Thomas, which are acknowledged even 2,000 years ago to be heretical, false texts. That's where they get their Jesus from, because he's the one who makes clay birds. He talks out of the cradle as a baby. These are not doctrine. These are false doctrines pushed by these different sects. Then Muhammad learned those, and in fact, his first wife, her cousin was a Nestorian priest. Either Nestorian or Ebionite, as far as I know, an Ebionite priest. In other words, he was from a Gnostic, heretical Christian sect, and that's where they have all these weird beliefs. So he actually had contact with this man, who very possibly might have been his father.
Interesting.
So
Because I have read the Gospel. I've seen a few History Channel documentaries about the Gospel of Thomas. For those of you out there who need to know, they basically take away the divinity of Christ. They make it so that like Christ pushes one of his childhood friends off of a building, and then he resurrects them. It's heretical. Let's just to say the least.
he's a pretty nasty boy. I mean, in the Gnostic text. So
Yeah. So yeah, continue.
It's pretty much it's more for entertainment purposes. I mean, edification purposes. It probably explains its bizarre writing style.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I could sort of see it like how they're trying to make Jesus, the son of God, be more like man than he is like God. So like, there's some sort of like more darker, edgier version of Jesus. But if that's the only thing they know, then it makes sense why they would be so angry at us.
they're incredibly angry at us. I'll step into some of that in a moment. Let's see. This is a polemic. Now, this has become the doctrine in Islam. It started with a man called Ibn Hazm, who had students, and two of the famous people who then was Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Qayyim. They wrote the standard of so they wrote the polemics that have become standard Islamic anti-Christian polemics. And for instance, I'll read a little bit. If one can tolerate the mischievous deeds of these people at all levels and hold himself back from fighting them, their blasphemies, he's talking about Christians, are intolerable and pose more than enough a cause and a duty to fight them as one would get rid of a brute animal, harmful and wicked by nature. So we are ones who choose to demean the glorification, the veneration, and the exaltation of the Lord, because we say that he was born where the sexual organs join, that he was gestated for 9 months where feces and urine comes out from, and that we had him whipped and slapped and beaten instead of revering him as perfect and untarnished. So we are the same people who chose to disbelieve and reject his servant and apostle. So, for instance, they said that we choose to worship handmade pictures drawn on walls and painted with different colors. If a dog comes close to the walls, it may happen that it may urinate on these pictures, and yet the makers of these pictures would still venerate them. Now, they say that the prayer of the Nazarenes ridicules the worship deity, and they refer here to the Lord's Prayer, Our Father who art in heaven. They say that this is an insult and blasphemy. They choose a way of prayer during which the most devoted and ascetic among them would consider it no great matter if he happens to pass urine dripping on his thighs and legs while we are praying. So we wouldn't care if while we are praying in church, saying the Lord's Prayer, that we happen to piss on ourselves, right? And then he says, then he would open a conversation with whomever happens to be sitting beside him, and probably the chat would be about some mundane matters like the price of wine or pork, who won in gambling, what dish he prepared at home, and the like. And then he would interrupt his prayer to talk about similar things and then urinate in his seat if he can.
Wow.
This is,
I mean, jeez. I don't know what to say. I mean, this is some hateful shit.
This is a 344-page book. We're on page 37.
Oh boy.
Doesn't get any better, I can tell you that. So let me go one more page out of this book. So we turned away from seeking true guidance. We chose to stray from the truth, and we are not different from wandering livestock. Right? And it goes on like this, that we are just cattle, we are sheep, we are donkeys, that we deliberately corrupted the Bible, that we worship a Christ who is Satan, right? And that, let's see, we are not, okay, so for instance, the glad tidings announced by Moses about the coming of Jesus are not different from the glad tidings announced by Jesus about the coming of Muhammad.
Mm-hmm.
Right, this is what they say. They talk about that, we are the worship of stones, idols, and the crosses, that this is blasphemy, that worshiping the cross is blasphemy.
When was this written, may I ask? I only ask this because
12 and 1300s.
So was this before or during the time of, I would say, Christianity's, I think it was the iconoclasm, where there was a rift between, I think, Eastern
schism, no, the schism, well, there were various, but if you're thinking, this is well before Martin Luther. I mean, he's another thing to talk about, but it's well before Martin Luther. So this is about the 1200s. This will be 200 years, no, 100 years, 100 to 200 years after the First Crusade.
Okay.
So, for instance, from among the angels, Gabriel is an enemy to the Jews.
Uh-oh.
Right? The Jews are people of slanders, and I'll show more about that in a minute.
Wow.
Right? Let me see. I'm trying to find some of the more relevant passages. Now,
because I know that there was I'm looking at right now on Wikipedia on Byzantine iconoclasms, in which the Orthodox Church started to crack down on icons of pictures of Christ and pictures of Mary and pictures of people out there.
Well, some of the Eastern Orthodox churches, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm wondering if this aligns with that particular timeline. So if there's,
Look,
let's say,
you never know. It might be that, for instance, I mean, yeah, there's a strong possibility that some of their polemics actually gave, shall we say, ammunition to those people who wanted to break from the Catholic Church, because while everyone hates the Catholic Church, everybody wants to be the Catholic Church. So
that is true. Yeah.
so for instance, they claim consistently, if you read the book, it's the same arguments over and over, but that we do not have the original Bible that God sent down to Jesus, right? Now, for instance, this is they're talking about us. Their false methods in manipulating the original text can be summed up in 5 points. Our dubiousness and subtlety in wrapping the truth with falsity in a way hardly distinguishable. We conceal the truth. We locked up the truth in secrecy. We distorted the written words out of their intended meanings. We distorted the spelling and the pronunciation, and we distorted the meaning, and we twisted the tongue when reciting, blah, blah. Basically, we simply just lied about the Bible, right? So that we have the authentic texts were all lost forever. And also lost is the Old Testament in the hands of the Christians. Indeed, religions and holy books have been changed by the hands of the people. I mean the Christians here. It is hardly believable that the ancient books could have missed the mention of such a great event. That event would be the birth of Muhammad. So they claim that the prophets Daniel, Ezekiel, Isaiah, especially, amongst others, all were prophesying the arrival, not of Jesus, although they do mention that, yes, they do speak of Jesus, but really their prophecies were about the coming of Muhammad. And even Jesus spoke of the coming of Muhammad. See, in the former books is the mention of the former books, not the current Bible, the correct Bible, not the false Bible, the glad tidings and the coming of Muhammad. So the Jews meddled with it. Let me show you just 3 pages out of this book.
All right, take your time.
Okay, 12. So this book is a refutation of supposedly everything that is false in Christianity. It's all by Ibn Taymiyyah. There was Ibn Qayyim I was reading a moment ago. So they say Islam is the religion with which all messages and prophets had been sent. In other words, all the prophets were Muslims. All the prophets came to proclaim Islam. The Christians and the Jews deliberately changed the Bible to change every single prophet's message. Thus, no religion is accepted from any human being other than Islam. This also applies to those who came before Muhammad.
So they're basically saying that you have to be, I don't care about your new religion. I don't care about your old religion. I care about the real religion, which is Islam, essentially.
Correct. The only religion.
The only religion.
So, for instance, the claim of the Christians that Muhammad was not sent to them is false, and we do not need to follow this messenger. They refute all the above claims. I'll just mention 2 more, then I'll skip to something else. So there is the Quran is a plea against the Christians and not for them, right? Mm-hmm. And so as regards annulling their false religious beliefs, so the Quran annuls all of our false religious beliefs, right? And the invalidity of their proofs, and furthermore present clear proofs exposing the corruption of Christian beliefs. This is standard Islamic doctrine. It is not radical. It is not unusual. This is the norm. This is what Muslims believe. I'll do 1 more page from this guy. There's hundreds of pages. Like this one is 385 pages long, so I can't do everything. But
I mean, you can't do everything. I mean, if it's 500 pages, 600 pages,
I'll just
700
read one
pages.
more line. But he says here that Ibn Qayyim goes on. He actually speaks about this multiple times. I'll just read the first entry where he says, he also said that he received the command of Allah, that's Muhammad, that such disbelievers should be fought.
Wow. But what I was going to say is that this is so legalistic, and this is all like legal manuals, like case law, right? This is all like law that would already be set up. And it's not part of the original. Like, you could argue people give out the Book of Mormon, they give out the book of, the Bible, they give out Qurans. They don't give out this information, and you're supposed to do it. Yeah. So this is really dangerous. This is like cult level. Like, we're gonna indoctrinate you into it.
I've just done a brief overview. Believe me, it is dark, and it's corroborated by the Sharia, and it's corroborated by their madrasa manuals, what they learn from the age of 5. I'm going to do a few pages, just a bit more on Islam. because I will be doing a more in-depth discussion on this material in a few weeks, and I will be doing some videos on this. I already have done my first one this week. So let me do a few pages, then we can skip on to Judaism, because most of the anti-Jewish polemics actually comes from Islam, and I believe it's been copied by Christians, and it was also taken up by Hitler in Mein Kampf.
Well, actually, I have something I want to give you at the end of this presentation. When you're
Sure.
finished with everything and we get into the final thoughts, I want to give you something.
Yeah. So tell me something. Everyone claims that, oh, the Jews must be murdered because they don't believe in Jesus. We've just read what Islam, in Orthodox Islam, claims about Jesus, Christians, and the Bible. Why is this not being discussed?
Like I said, I think it's due to the fact that it is concealed. It's a concealed religion. There are different levels of indoctrination, like you said before.
And yeah, let me do these few pages. So in other words, Jesus actually exalted God against what the Trinitarians, the cross worshippers, said about him. So in other words, the whole crucifixion is a blasphemy against God. It is a demeaning of him. So the Trinitarians, the cross worshippers, said about him, and against the traits of imperfection, shame, and contempt they attributed to him. And also he says here, I will not go away and leave you like orphans. I will come back and pray behind this imam. This is Jesus saying that when he's sending the Holy Spirit, right? When he leaves, he says, I will not leave you alone. I will send you the Holy Spirit. No. He was saying, I will send you Muhammad, right? He was an advisor. Jesus was an advisor who foretold the coming of his brother in prophethood. Jesus is just a prophet, just a regular prophet, Muhammad. And Muhammad believed in Jesus and confirmed his prophethood. In other words, then Muhammad rewrote the Bible completely and said, no, it actually says as follows. Now, let's see what they say about the Jews, what the Orthodox, and I don't mean radical, I mean the Orthodox, standard, normal, common, every Muslim thinks this about the Jews' opinion, is as follows. When God sent Muhammad, the people of the book, that's us, the Jews and the Christians, and the pretenders of faith, the hypocrites who followed no book, that's atheists. The people of the book are of two kinds, the cursed ones and those who went astray, which is the Christians. The cursed ones are the Jews. Those who went astray are the Christians. The people who angered God are the Jews, the people of lies and falsifications, of perfidy, deception, chicanery, the murderers of the prophets, the people of usury. What's interesting about that is if you read Deuteronomy, it bluntly says in the laws of Moses that Jews may lend money with interest to non-Jews, but to Jews, they should not use interest. So if they lend money to their brothers, the Jews, they should not charge interest, but to non-Jews, they may charge interest. So in fact, it is the word of God in the Bible, in Deuteronomy, that allows them to use interest. So I don't know how that's a bad thing, because then someone has to go back to God and say, God, we don't like the fact that, Jews do usury. Well, it's in the Bible. If you don't like the Bible, complain to God. And they are the most malicious of all people in intentions. They are the worst in temperament, the furthest to mercy, and the closest to vengeance. Hatred is their nature. Enmity and bitterness are their habits. Habits of machination, lies, and trickery.
This is projection. This is literally projection.
Yeah.
Everything that they claim the Jews do, they're doing it themselves.
Yeah,
It's
goes
hilarious.
Yeah, in their midst, the most wicked is the wisest, the shrewdest is the most deceitful. The level-headed, who is never found among them, is not a Jew. Among all people, they are the shortest in patience, the most excessive in wrongdoing to their families at home. Here they're implying incest. So they are the most unmindful for cleanliness at home, the most vicious in disposition. Greeting them is maledictive, meeting them is ominous. Their slogan is indignation, and their attire in rancor. This is their views of the Jews, and I guess that all of these good Christians are just repeating the Islamic Jew hatred because they are Christians for Islam, Christians for Allah. So the Christians are cattle who are led astray. So the Trinitarians are the people who went astray. They're the worshippers of the cross. Our worship is blasphemy against God in an unprecedented way. So they were judged as being more astray in their mindlessness than camels, cattle, and sheep, because we had joined partners to him. In other words, the Trinity. We rejected the message of Islam and accepted a false belief. See, we are the illusioned abandoners of the true religion, Islam, and we accepted the cross and idols as gods. So now they say, Mary, we believe that that we said that God is part of three. Mary is his companion, and the Messiah is his son. So Muhammad thought for some reason that it was God the Father, God the Son, and Mary. This is Orthodox Islamic belief. I don't know where he got this idea, but they believe that Mary is his companion. Their religion is drinking wine, eating pork, abandoning circumcision, indulgence in adoring unclean things, permissiveness in eating everything unblessed for human consumption, from an elephant to a gnat. To them, what is lawful or unlawful is what the priest decides. Their religion is what he sanctions, and the priest forgives sins. Yeah,
I was going to say, I could probably guess where they got the notion of God, the Son, and then Mary. That sounds very similar to the notion that like you have Osiris, and then you have, I think, Isis, and then you have Ra, I believe. Like the notion of having like the Trinity that is the Father, the Mother, and the Son, right?
Right.
And to put this in a kind of cultural context, if you say you were Muhammad as a child, and you go into a Catholic building, and you see this statue of Mary and Jesus, and you see people kind of lean towards and show reverence to it,
okay.
You're gonna go, oh wait, so they're worshiping, they're worshiping that child, and that woman has something to do with God sexually.
Well, this shows he doesn't know the scriptures. He doesn't know the doctrine. He was simply just making things up as he went.
Yeah.
Now notice, Islam is the only religion accepted by Allah, and there is no other religion on earth. So now they talk about using the sword on Christians. Now this is just an introduction. I mean, it gets worse as we go down, but you should not say what the incapable, ignorant, that's us, had said. The faith rejectors can only be treated with the sword, and there is no need to reason with them. The sword came to put the proof of Islam into effect, to redress the obdurate oppressor who stands against the right of self-expression and freedom of speech, which is really weird because, and a warning to the evading rejecter. It's a warning to the one who rejects Islam. So, sent down with them the book and the balance of right and wrong, that men may stand forth in justice. And then we sent down iron. Allah sent down iron, in which is material for mighty war. Now, this goes on in Ibn Taymiyyah's book, and he says that in Islam, iron was sent down for war. And he says that this applies to the Muslims because Jesus and the apostles spoke a message of peace.
When was this written, may I ask? I only bring this up because
Around
when
the
you say
1200s. This is around the 1200s.
one of the things, have you heard of dragon metal by chance, Lloyd? The notion of well, this is just something that, again, as I'm reading this and I'm hearing this, dragon metal is the notion that there's like a meteorite comes down from Earth down to Earth, and there's metal in it, and that metal can be used to forge into a weapon.
That is the so the Kaaba is a meteorite.
Oh,
there's that's a long story. So yeah,
shit.
So Islam rose right through the guiding book and was defended through the sharp sword. Right? It is the cure. The sword is the cure for the ill of every reasoning man. In other words, the reasoning Muslims, it's reasonable to kill you. It is the remedy of the malady of ignorance. We have the ignorance, they have the cure.
God damn, it's dark.
So notice now they speak of that the Bible was altered, and we extracted Muhammad's name, his undisguised name, from the Bible. And it mentions some of the unseemly accounts of the people of both books, the Jews and the Christians, and what they're up to. They are most notorious among the people in forsaking their apostles. The scriptures of the apostles bear witness to their unfaithfulness and their straying from the path. And it says religions are 6 in number. 1 is for Allah and 5 are for Satan. And we just do a couple of slides. I'll just finish this and we can talk about the Jewish stuff. We can go to that. So he who did not embrace Islam had to pay the jizya and was humble. This is Quran 9:29. Those two unbelieving nations, the people who angered God, the Jews and the misguided people, the Christians, so we have to be humbled and pay the jizya. Quran 9:29, fight them until they feel themselves subdued and they pay the jizya. It is known that the lines of the prophets believed in the forthcoming message of Muhammad. Right? And So we are more astray, the misguided nation, the Christians, who are more astray than a herd of lost livestock. These are the Nazarenes who are not expected to be better than their predecessors, the Jews. And so where do the minds of the calf worshippers, the Jews, and the cross worshippers, the Christians, who made out of themselves a laughing stock to all wise men through the insipid contents of their minds and by what they attributed to their idols, stand compared to the minds of the Muslims? They lied against God. They uttered the most abhorrent blasphemies against him, their lies about the Messiah and their alteration of his true religion. So they spoke of a coming of a prophet whose time has come near. Follow him, O you community of the Jews. He will be sent with an enjoinment, a legal injunction, this is Muhammad, to spill blood, to capture lands and women of those who intend to stand in his way. Do not let this prevent you from following him. That's Muhammad, come to spill blood. So then Muhammad, he fought against them, he humbled them, he chased them out of their lands, he imposed tribute on them and declared them to be among the people of hell. They are the worst of livestock in the sight of God, Christians and Jews. And if one can tolerate their mischievous deeds of these people at all levels and hold himself back from fighting them, their blasphemies are intolerable and pose more than enough cause and a duty to fight them as one would get rid of a brute animal, harmful and wicked by nature. So let me just do the very last slide. We've done this one already. This is about if he happens to pass urine dripping on his thighs and legs. So we wouldn't care if we were praying and we literally pissed on ourselves during prayer. That's that. And we would urinate, we would pray and when we urinate in our seats if we could, because we wouldn't care. That's how little prayer means to us.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that's Islam. That's Orthodox Islam.
Yeah,
Oh,
the only
how is this quasi-Christian cult survived this long?
I
Dude,
think
I
they're
wish I knew. By the sword, by fear, by
well, that
violence.
explains that.
You know, it's disgusting. I mean, and people going about the Jews, and you're like, you got to keep reading this stuff to see how they talk about Jesus, who was gestated between urine and feces for 9 months in the womb, and this is disgusting. And you're like, good grief, it is disgusting.
yeah. I mean, we talked before, and you've debunked a few claims about the Talmud, such as I believe it was Jesus who was supposedly burning in his own excrement. I believe, right?
So, well, again, I mean, I didn't prepare specifically for that, but for instance, there are 9 different copies of the Talmud, and in only 2 of those versions, or 9 different versions of the Talmud, in only 2 of those does that story appear. It doesn't appear in the other 7. Now, we know that, for instance, the Talmud was forcibly edited by Christians, right? And they made alterations where they actually placed content in the Talmud, right? They burned a lot of the originals. So some of that content may actually well have been placed in there by Christians who hated Jews. As I said, Christians for Allah. And then, so it's not in every single version, right? No one seems to care about the things the Muslims are saying, that Islam is saying, that I just read. No one cares about that. That's okay.
Yeah,
right?
you said before that that it's okay to look at both the crypts and the bloods. Don't just focus on the bloods, but focus on the crypts as well. And that's sort of what I'm trying to do here with this series, so to speak.
And then they talk about, for instance, that the Jews talk about Jesus, who was studying, went to Egypt to study witchcraft and came back as a sorcerer. Well, Jesus was actually a very common name in Judaism at the time, and that story was written approximately 200 years before Jesus was born.
Right. That is interesting. That is very interesting.
Understand? So this is obviously not the same person. What I've got here is let's talk about some of the I'll jump straight into it, and we talk about, for instance, they will say that, there's the whole story that they will say that for a Gentile to study the Torah is blasphemy and he must be beheaded. That's a common lie that is told about the Talmud and about the Jews, right? Mm-hmm. And what they don't know, the Talmud is made up of 2 portions, the Mishnah and the Gemara. So you have the written law, and then you have a commentary on which is Moses' law that you find in all over the Torah, the 613 commandments. Then you've got what they call the oral law, and then you've got commentaries on that. And the Talmud is essentially the debates. It's a discussion about the debates of the rabbis. It's like a diary of their discussions, their debates, trying to understand and apply an exegesis of the law. And it's a back and forth. It is not always definitive. And sometimes it's just a discussion. Well, what if this? What if this? What if this? What if this? What if we change that? So it's really it shows the deliberation that went into ultimately codifying the Jewish law, right? And people then take a sentence, like a question, out of it, and they claim that this is definitive and that this is what it says. So, for instance, they will tell you that for a Gentile to study the Torah, that he must be beheaded, he must be killed. Well, what's interesting is, in which religion is beheading common? Take a while. Islam. What are the 4 legal punishments practiced in Judaism? Strangling, drowning, burning, and stoning. Beheading is not part of the 4 legal punishments in Judaism. And we're talking from 2,000 years ago. I mean, no one is being stoned, strangled, burned, or what's the 4th one? Anyway, those 4 punishments are not being applied in Israel today, but guess where they're being applied today? Just
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, the Middle East, exactly. Now, for instance, it says here, right? You shall therefore keep my statutes and my ordinance, which if a man does, he shall live by them, which is Leviticus 18:5, right? And you have therefore learned that even a Gentile who engages in Torah study is considered like a high priest, right? This is what is in the Talmud, right? So why do they take the portion where they say, well, so the one rabbi says, well, we don't like them, these unclean Gentiles, whatever, studying our Torah. And someone says, hold on, that's not right. It says in Leviticus that if someone wants to keep my law and live by them, this is a good thing. Therefore, a Gentile who engages in Torah study is considered like a high priest. Why don't they quote that portion? Because that is the final definitive answer in this passage.
You have therefore learned that even Gentiles can be learned.
So, right now, for instance, I'll give you some examples before I skip. So here's an interesting one. Actually, no. Let me actually go to this. If a Jew finds an object, let's actually do these. Let's take one. These are some of the things that I drink turpentine Benjamin.
Yeah, I showed you a lot of Owen stuff. In fact, to be honest with you, I think he is closer to Muhammad than most people would think. I mean, if you think about it, what is Muhammad's sins? His sins are that of constantly not accepting the truth, constantly saying, no, you're wrong. Here's why. He rejects any dialogue, any discussion, just says gamma, gamma, gamma. You're ankle biter, you're this, you're that. I could see the same thing being said from a Muslim's perspective on these matters. When you try to confront him and say, no, that wasn't the original canon that was used. That was a Gnostic gospel. So I mean.
Yeah. So as I said, the Talmud is not always definitive. It sometimes discusses a point. Sometimes it actually comes to no conclusion. There literally is no conclusion. Right? It just says, look, these were the issues they discussed. They were trying to understand the application of the law in every context possible. So if a Jew finds an object lost by a goy, it does not have to be returned. This is apparently Baba Metzia 24a. So what's interesting, Islam has exactly the same law in the Sharia, but no one discusses that. But let's have a look, right? So that's what they claim. Now, and they state here this is Safaria.org that I'm using, and it's Bava Metzia 24a, passage 5. In the case of one who finds a lost item in a main thoroughfare or a large plaza or in any place where multitudes are found, these items belong to him that found them due to the fact that the owner despairs of their recovery. Now, I have to ask, why don't they quote the entire passage? Why do they paraphrase it, shorten it, and then misrepresent it? Because you'd think they're talking about theft, because it says very clearly that the 8th commandment is thou shalt not steal.
Right.
And the Jews take that very seriously, right? So it says here, in a large plaza, in a place where multitudes are found. And in fact, they go further in the passage. They speak about things that have no identifying mark, like coins, like a note, There's no identifying mark on it. How are you going to find the owner? So, and then they state, if we go down here, conclude from the Baraita that Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar holds that a lost item belongs to the finder, even in a place where there is a majority of Jews, like as in synagogues and study halls, the yeshiva, which are places frequented exclusively by Jews.
So essentially, the notion here would be, well, finders keepers, going once, going twice, 3 times. Okay, well, I'm going to take it then, because there's just so many people there that there's no way.
Hope of finding the owner. Does the owner even know that he lost it? He might only find out the next morning when he checks his pocket.
Yeah.
Right. They're not talking about that. So, in fact, if you read through the lengthy passage, and some of these passages are like 50, 60 paragraphs, right? So they take literally, so think about this. Let's count this. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 17 words, okay? They take 17 words. Now, this is only a fraction of the actual full discussion. I'm going to scroll down. This is a fraction. This is not even the entire discussion. Can you see how long this is? This is already about 4 or 5 pages. Okay, we're looking at 20 or 30 paragraphs. They've taken 17 words and claimed that that is what it says.
This is like a doctoral thesis almost on the law.
This is not even all of it, dude. You must read the whole thing. I've read it. I spent 3.5 months reading this.
Jesus Christ. That's, yeah. They care about, go ahead.
So they're saying we are dealing with a case where coins are scattered and where there is no distinguishing mark on them. Understand? So,
yep.
And so even in a place where the multitudes are not found, the coins belong to the finder, because how do you know the owner? The owner isn't expecting to find it. Doesn't even know where he lost it. Doesn't even know that he lost it. Then so all of these questions come up, right? So again, this is reiterated. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, and he stated his opinion even in a place where there is a majority of Jews. They said it counts even in a synagogue, right? So this is not a slight against Christians. This is just being practical.
Yeah, yeah. That is interesting. Oh, wow.
So it belongs to the finder because the owner despaired of recovering a barrel misplaced in a public area. Now, in fact, if you read through it, if you read different portions of it, they state if the name is on it, you should keep it and give it back. And in fact, it links back to various passages in Deuteronomy, Leviticus, and others, where these laws are actually discussed as part of the laws of Moses. So everything in the Talmud, literally everything in the Talmud, links back to the Torah or to other passages of the Bible, but mostly the Torah. So they actually reference specific biblical passages in every case. So you can see here from the fact, so the Mishnah teaches with regards to one who left a stolen item to his children, the heirs are obligated to pay the owner. It refers even to a cow that he plows with or a donkey that he drives by directing it from behind, which the heirs are obligated to return. That's Bava Kama 113a. We'll get to that in Mr. Owen Benjamin in a minute. From the fact that the heirs must return a cow and a donkey, one can infer that they must also return a bed and a table. Right. Why don't they mention these passages?
They don't because I don't know. Maybe it's because, this is, well, there are multiple reasons why. You could have one that nobody's going to read 5 pages, let alone of a foreign Hebrew language. And again, Christians might have done that. That's a possibility. There's also the fact that, nobody knew about this. They just thought, oh, well, here's a quote from Star Wars.
Well, but then you've got a scholar like Michael Hoffman, who happens to be a serial liar. He writes books on this stuff, and he will quote those 17 words and forget the entire passage that actually refutes those words, because those words are a question. They're not a statement. They're not a finding. They're not a ruling. They're not a law. They are a question. And the question is then answered here.
And if I can allow a moment of brevity, I'd like to play this little clip some bit.
Sure.
Okay, play it.
Let's see if I can... Oh, no. All right, here we go.
Look, I'll do what I can, but I don't know why you think I can get your money back.
Max. Let's not deny our heritages. You're Jewish. You're good with money. I'm Irish. I drink, and I ban homosexuals from marching in my parade. Now help me get my money back.
All right.
That's a little bit, a little
Seth MacFarlane humor there.
Yeah.
So in many cases, people are quoting books and verses that actually do not exist. They will reference a supposed book of the Talmud that actually does not exist. There is no such book. It was completely fabricated. Now, the fabrications go back to a number of sources. I didn't discuss that, but there were a number of books written. There were 3 or 4 famous ones written and articles that completely disparage, completely lie about the subject. The most recent one was in 1900 by a defrocked Catholic priest who was eventually ended up being sued, and he was thrown out of the Catholic Church for his lies. A man called Pranitis, and he and his bishop hated Jews, and they wrote a book about Jews that was completely garbage, but about the Talmud. And so, for instance, they speak of Choshen Ham 2661. Now, in this case, when they disparage the Talmud, this is not the Talmud. Choshen Ham, and in fact, there is no Choshen Ham. There is Choshen Mishpat, but there is no Choshen Ham, right? So they will reference, and there are other examples I can get into, which I can show, where they talk about books that actually, they don't even exist. The quote doesn't exist.
What does Choshen Ham mean? Like, do these
I wish
chapters...
I knew. This is called this. Okay, this is from the Shulchan Aruch, which is a it's like the Sharia, it's like a book of legal opinions by a major scholar of Islam. Sorry, major scholar of Judaism, my bad. Sorry. So they speak of, for instance, a Jew may keep anything he finds which belongs to the Gentile, right? Now notice it says here, now that's what they say, it apparently says in passage 266 verse 1, right? But it says here, a sanctification of God's name, so they will glorify Israel and know they are people of faith, okay? So notice it says it is forbidden to keep his lost property, and he is obligated to return it. And they refer to the lost property of your brother in Deuteronomy 22, verse 3. It is forbidden to keep lost property, and you are obligated to return it. But in the previous passage, they said, if you can't find the owner, well, then tough, right? You're going to have to keep it. You can't find him, even if you find it in a synagogue, right? And they say here, Deuteronomy 22, verse 1, thou shalt not see thy brother's ox, or his sheep go astray, right? If thou, so you will... it says here, thou brothers, all lost things of thy brothers which he has lost, and thou hast found, shalt thou do likewise, right? So there's an obligation to return a lost object, because you shall surely return them, Deuteronomy 22, verse 1. And it goes on and on and on. So they make this claim that that's what the Choshen Mishpat says, but if you read the Choshen Mishpat, it says return lost items.
Yeah. It just goes to show you that nobody's reading, nobody's looking deep into this, nobody is doing their due diligence like you are and like I am, like Luke is doing, to try to look into this, to try to get to the truth. They'd rather just have it's kind of like social media, tweets, like no one looks into the contents of what the tweets are saying. Someone says a few things they're derogatory or inflammatory, and they never look into what was said prior to that or before or after.
Correct. They're deliberately doing that. I want to play a short section, just a few sections of Owen Benjamin, and I'm going to refute one of his famous rants, which proves this man to be an out-and-out liar, and I hope someone will tell him I said that.
Oh, I can tell him you said that. That's fine.
So let me play this.
You have to understand that in the Talmud, the Jews say, let me quote it, Jews may use lies to circumvent a Gentile. That's in Baba Kama 113a.
You guys heard that?
Baba Kama 113a.
Yeah, so he says, if you think that they have to tell the truth, you have to understand that in the Talmud they say, let me quote it, Jews may use lies to circumvent a Gentile. That's in Baba Kama 113a. Now, this man's been drinking too much turpentine, because I don't believe his IQ is 147. It's more like 14.7. So now notice, this is a very lengthy discussion. Okay, it's an incredibly lengthy discussion. I'm going to just summarize from it is in Bava Kama 113a. So I'll start in passage 15. The Mishnah is discussing a customs collector who does not have a limitation placed by the governor on the amount he may collect. So he collects as he pleases. In other words, it's extortion. Alternatively, the sages of the school of Rabbi Yanai said, The Mishnah is discussing a customs collector who stands on his own. He was not appointed by the government, but on his own, and he forces people to give him money. So now you've got a case of a tax collector who is unlawfully taking money from people in excess of what he's legally allowed to. And the question is, do you then lie to him, or do you just pay and get robbed by this tax collector? And then, in fact, the discussion goes further, and it says, what may you lie to him about? Yes, you should pay him in terms of the things, even if he's robbing you. If it is government money that you're in, let's say you got to pay 5% tax, and he says, give me 10%. So instead of giving him $5, you give him $10. That's fine. You give him that because that's the law, that's the government, and you obey the government, right? But they say, but what if it's a gift that you received? What if it's an heirloom and he wants to tax you on something that he's not legally allowed to tax you on? What do? Do you lie then? And that is where that specific ruling or idea, that discussion focuses on. Do you pay him on things that he's not allowed to tax you on?
Things like, let's say, your mother's wedding ring that is passed down.
Correct.
Things like that.
Correct.
Things that would not necessarily translate to liquid assets, perhaps even.
Correct. So what exactly? So it says here, one may vow before murderers, plunderers, and customs collectors. In other words, people who want to kill you, people who want to rob and plunder you, and customs collectors who want to illegally extort from you. Right? So you may say that a certain item is teruma, in other words, a gift, or that it belongs to the king's house. In other words, like something, I don't know what they mean by that exactly, but something that is not your property and you are keeping it on behalf of someone else, right? In this case, the king, and thereby avoid its seizure, despite the fact that it is not a gift or that it does not belong to the king's house. So in other words, they're asking, how can we circumvent someone who's trying to kill us, someone who's trying to plunder from us, rob us, or a customs collector who's acting illegally? So can it be permitted that it is permitted to pronounce such a vow before customs collectors? And then Shmuel says, the law of the kingdom is the law. It should therefore be prohibited to lie before the customs collector. That's what they actually say. Then it goes on, and now remember, this is a discussion. It is a debate. So then they go on with Rabbi Bar Kahana says, with regard to a customs collector who does not have a limitation, right? And they reaffirm it's a customs collector who's stealing from you, right? The dispute is with regards to a customs collector who stands on his own, who is self-appointed. You don't know that this man actually works for the government. He's lying to you. Do you understand?
Right.
So they go on, and then the final one is they give a second circumstance where this may apply. The Mishnah issues its ruling with regards to a Gentile customs collector, whom one may deceive as it is taught in a Baraita, in the case of a Jew and a Gentile who approach the court for judgment in a legal dispute. Now they bring up a second case, right? A different circumstance, a different example or scenario. And they say here, if you can vindicate the Jew under Jewish law, vindicate him. And say to the Gentile, this is our law. If he can be vindicated under Gentile law, vindicate him and say to the Gentile, this is your law. And if it is not possible to vindicate him under either system of law, one approaches the case circuitously, seeking a justification to vindicate the Jew. Now that sounds pretty bad, right? This is the statement of Rabbi Yishmael. Now, these statements are not necessarily rulings. They're simply problems put forward for legal students to discuss. Then it goes on, and Rabbi Akiva, who's the senior rabbi, the top guy, he says, Rabbi Akiva disagrees, and he gives the final ruling here. He says, one does not approach the case circuitously in order to vindicate the Jew due to the sanctification of God's name, as God's name will be desecrated if the Jewish judge employs dishonest means.
Wow. So they really do care about the law. They really, really do care about the law. They really care about doing what's right.
Thou shalt not lie. That's the 7th, I think, of the 10 Commandments.
Yep. Yeah. And then, again, this vindicates the notion of Judaism being some sort of evil religion. It's not. It's a legal religion, and they have reasons why they believe it. This, again, one of the things I've always seen, at least in my own personal walks in real life, is people don't ever discuss the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law. This is them trying to explain the spirit of the law. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, and do you understand? There were those questions of cheating were questions, were not commandments.
Yeah, they're questions, they're reasoning behind
Yeah,
it.
let's do another one. So they talk about Avodah Zarah 22a. Christians have sex with animals, have intercourse with animals, right? Now, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words. Those are 5 words. Christians have intercourse with animals. 5 words. The whole passage itself is extremely lengthy. I'm going to this I have here is the definitive section, right, which is here. So the Mishnah says, one may not keep an animal in the inns of Gentiles because they are suspected of bestiality. But then the very next sentence says, since even Gentiles are prohibited from engaging in bestiality, a Jew who places animals there is guilty of violating the prohibition. You shall not put a stumbling block before the blind. Leviticus 19:14. But then the Gemara goes on, with regard to the assumption that Gentiles are suspected of bestiality, the Gemara raises a contradiction. One may purchase an animal from Gentiles for use as an offering, which is a sacrifice offering, and there is no concern that it might be unfit due to it being an animal that copulated with a person, or due to it being an animal that was the object of bestiality. A Gentile protects and thereby spares his own animal so that it will not become barren. Since an act of bestiality may cause an animal to become barren, there is no concern that the Gentile engaged in immoral behavior with it.
So they're just concerned about the quality of the animal, and they acknowledge that Gentiles might do it, but that doesn't necessarily.
No. This first question is just a question. Someone is just saying, are we safe to buy animals from Gentiles? What if they had bestiality? What if they had animal sex with it? What if? Do you understand? These are all what if, and they state no, they would not do this. Do you understand? Because the rest of it completely invalidates that question, that claim. It might look like a claim, it's a question, right? So you have this is called what's called responsa, right? It's a form of question and then comment. It's a formal process where I pose a problem and you provide me a refutation. So it's also a form of legal training for legal students.
Interesting. That is responsa, it's called, right?
Yeah.
All right, I'll
Actually,
be
let me find it for you here. Responsa, Latin, plural of responsum or answers, comprise a body of written decisions and rulings given by legal scholars or jurists in response to questions addressed to them. So these, what are taken as statements and falsely quoted as statements, are questions.
Interesting.
Right. So if you look at historians Will and Ariel Durant, they note that the Talmud is not the product of deliberation. It is the deliberation itself. The Talmud is like a diary of the debates that they had.
Right.
It is not the final answers. It is the discussion that was had to get to the answers. Right. So what's your friend's name? The other host?
Luke.
Luke. So what are your thoughts so far, based on what I've been talking about?
It's so strange that I've been hearing the alt-right arguments and everything else, but it's just so weird that no one on the other side of the aisle has actually done any kind of media deliberation on this. Like every time I hear like a media presentation of the Talmud, it's always like, oh, it's always these horrible things they say about Christians. But I always find it strange that no one like Dennis Prager or Ben Shapiro actually bothered to explain how that works, or actually made a presentation of how that works.
Right. I'm amazed. I have asked myself the same question, why they haven't bothered. But look, also the facts just don't matter to a lot of these people, right? I'll take another one, like the best of Gentiles kill. You may have heard that statement, right?
Before we continue, I have a nice little audio clip for us.
Okay.
Play your clip.
Somehow, though, Jew hatred has an extra special racisty goodness. Maybe it's because the Jews were instrumental in establishing the godly principles of love and morality that underlie the West's amazing achievements, and they're thus identified with conscience and the guilt we feel when we behave selfishly or cruelly. And it does make them kind of a pain in the neck. Sorry.
So yeah, Andrew Clavin. For instance, the term "the best of Gentiles," right? Kill. Do you know that is a line taken straight out of Exodus 14:7? Now, no one has ever had a problem with Exodus 14, verse 7. No one has ever had a problem with it, right? But when it appears in the Talmud, suddenly it's a problem. And it's about the escape of the Jews from Egypt. and they trusted certain Egyptians, right? They felt that they had a loyalty with these Egyptians. And what happened was that when the Pharaoh told them that, they had to wipe out the Jews, even these friends of theirs turned against them. And thus, God says to the Jews, even these best of Gentiles, the people that you felt were the best of Gentiles, that you felt were your friends, they are disloyal to you. They are going to kill you. You have to kill them because they will kill you. It's war, right? They have to fight. So the best of Gentiles kill. So the Midrash concludes that these God-fearing Egyptians, the best Egyptians, turned out to be the ones that gave their horses to chase the Jewish people. In this particular instance, even the best Egyptians turned out to be oppressors, but even the best of Gentiles were deserving of death. And this specifically refers to the escape from Egypt in Exodus 14:7. Now,
And this is Midrash, right?
yes, this is. Yeah. So understand, this doesn't refer to go kill. Whereas if you read the Sharia, that most specifically does tell Muslims to go and kill all of the non-Muslims, to go and kill the Christians. Yes, that it does. In fact, I can get to that.
So Midrash, based on what I know, I've heard it be used before, is an ancient commentary on part of the Hebrew scriptures attached to the biblical text. The earliest Midrash comes from the 2nd century AD, although much of the content is older. This is from the dictionary.
Yeah.
So this is a commentary saying that, the best of the Egyptians were still, going to go after the Jews.
It's a commentary on Exodus. It's a commentary. It's not a command to go and murder the rest of the world.
Right.
It's purely a commentary on. So this is just another one of those incredible lies told by people that have no basis in reality.
Yeah.
So again?
No, you go ahead. Keep going.
So yeah, I just want to bring to light some of those. Let me see this. Yeah, I'll pause there with that because those are the ones that I kind of prepared, especially the ones that Owen Benjamin's been known to talk about. And okay, a goy or Gentile who pries into the law, the Talmud is guilty of death, right? So again, in Sanhedrin 59a, passages 3-4, the Gemara, a Gentile who studies Torah robs the Jewish people of it. And the punishment of a Gentile who studies Torah is execution by stoning, right? That's the problem that is put forward in the responsa, right? And of course, it goes on. The Gemara raises an objection to Rabbi Yohanan's statement. Rabbi Meir would say, from where is it derived that even a Gentile who engages in Torah study is considered like a high priest? It is derived from that which is stated, you shall keep my statutes and my ordinances, which if a man does, he shall live by them. Leviticus 18:5. So a man, which indicates mankind in general, you have therefore learned that even a Gentile who engages in Torah study is considered like a high priest.
Interesting.
So do you understand how they are misrepresenting what is actually being said here?
Yeah, I could see that. I could definitely see that. I'm convinced of that. I just like Luke says, why aren't they just coming out and saying, hey, this is actually where the information lies? The information's out there.
I think they've just stopped caring. I think they've really just stopped caring. I mean, let me read this from the Sharia. Okay, this is section 09. As I said, this is the most famous Sharia manual in the world. It is also the most authenticated Sharia manual in the world, called the Umdat al-Salik, or the reliance of the traveler and the tools of the worshipper. It says here, jihad. Jihad means to make war against non-Muslims, and is derived from the word mujahada, signifying a warfare to establish Islam. Now, this section, right, is completely fabricated. It does not exist in the original Arabic. The translator added this himself.
Okay.
Right? So the original goes on to say, the scriptural basis for jihad prior to scholarly consensus is Quranic verses, fighting is prescribed for you. Quran 2:216. Slay them wherever you find them. Quran 4, verse 89. And fight the idolaters utterly. Quran 9:36. Muhammad says, I've been commanded to fight people until they testify that there is no God but Allah and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. That is what the Sharia, and it says here, section 09(1), the obligatory character of jihad. It is a communal obligation. When enough people perform it to successfully accomplish it, it is no longer obligatory upon others, which is why we have that small minority that never stops fighting. And although all Muslims are obliged to assist the jihad, so he who provides the equipment for a soldier in jihad has himself performed jihad. And those who do not perform jihad are not equal to those who do. And if no one performs jihad and it does not happen, then everyone who is aware that it is obligatory is guilty of sin. In other words, the entire Islamic community then falls into sin. So the first jihad is when the non-Muslims are in their own countries, in which case jihad is a communal obligation. Understand? Jihad is a communal obligation, meaning upon the Muslims each year. So at least once a year, they must invade another country.
Jesus Christ! It's like it's like compulsory military service under a dictator or despot.
I can read from other Sharia manuals.
No wonder Islam and Hitler aligned so well.
Yeah, no, they did. I should read from. I mean, I have done other shows.
But to make a point of it, it's like I just Google. I guess YouTube searched the Talmud and misconceptions on the Talmud, and I don't see any recognizable voices. And on both searches, I see Jesus in the Talmud, and then another video by Sanderson, the guy who made that. What's his name? Alexander Sanderson, the guy who. Who's notorious for? I mean, he's very outlandish Protestant pastor, but he's repeating those lies about the Talmud, though. Like those are the only I don't see any recognizable Jewish voices like defaming these things.
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't know if they really care. I think they just accepted it as part and parcel of life. I'd like to start. I've made 2 videos on this. I'd like to do more. I mean, for instance, another famous one, Bava Kama 37b. If an ox of an Israelite gores an ox of a Canaanite, good grief, it's a Canaanite. They aren't even around anymore. There is no liability. Right? But if an ox of a Canaanite goes an ox of an Israelite, the payment is to be in full. What it says, even when a Jew's ox goes that of a Gentile, the owner of the belligerent ox should be liable. I mean, it's right there. It's not hard to find. It's the last sentence in the passage. Even when the Jew's ox messes up someone else's ox, the Jew has to pay. Right? And if a Jew is tempted to do evil, he should go to a city where he is not known and do the evil there. Again, paraphrased. Completely paraphrased. It says, so there's a whole story. There's several pages of this story. There's a student, a rabbi, right? A student of a rabbinic student who went to visit prostitutes, and it was discovered that he had a habit of going to see prostitutes. So they said to him, look, this is shameful. You are going to bring shame on the rabbis. Go to another city, live there for a while, try to cure yourself of your sin, right? Cover your head, let no one see you, try to recover, and then come back to us, right? So there was a certain Torah scholar who gained a bad reputation, right? And then it says, this person had sinned, and he did so in private in a manner that did not publicly desecrate God's name.
Interesting.
I mean, so do you understand? So they tell him, go somewhere else where no one knows you, so that no one can see you committing sin, which is going to prostitutes. Right? This is the sin they're talking about. So what evil, I mean, do you understand the lies that are being told? It's just one after the other. So I've been working on all these and working through these and with Jan, and it's just lie after lie after lie.
Yeah. And I'll be frank with you. You guys practically have a monopoly on this information. No one else is speaking out on it. So I feel as though I have to give you guys a platform, because this is something that we talk about freedom of speech on this platform of mine on this show. This is an example of why freedom of speech needs to be protected, because while everyone's bashing the Jews, praising Islam, drinking turpentine, and all this other crap, this stuff is out there. The information is there.
Yeah, let's look at another copy of the Sharia. Let's talk about Islam and what Islam thinks of Christians. Let's read this on the left here, right? I'll zoom this in so that people can see it more clearly. You guys can see this fine? Should be pretty big on the screen. This is a Sharia manual. This is probably the second most famous Sharia manual in the world. It is called the Hidayah. This is the manual of the Hanbali school of fiqh, if I recall. School of Islamic Jurisprudence, and it says here, the sacred injunction, this is a law, concerning war, is sufficiently observed when it is carried on by any one party or tribe of Muslims, and then it is no longer of any force with respect to the rest, which is exactly what the previous Sharia manual just said. It is established as a divine ordinance by the word of Allah, who said in the Quran, slay the infidels, and also by the saying of Muhammad, war is permanently established until the day of judgment. It is enjoined for the purpose of advancing Islam, and it is to be waged against infidels. It is termed the Holy War. This is the Sharia. This is the ultimate interpretation of the Quran.
Wow. That's...
So it said if no Muslims were to make war, the whole of the Muslims would incur the criminality of neglecting it.
So then I guess the question is, what is considered war, right? What would
war,
they
as in the way we know war. Okay, the destruction of the sword, to answer your question, the destruction of the sword is incurred by infidels, although they be not the first aggressors, as appears from various passages in the sacred writings, that's the Quran, which are received to this effect. In other words, infidels may be attacked without provocation.
Jeez. So
See?
just for the record,
yeah.
just to play devil's advocate for a second, they're not talking about waging war against obesity or living a better life.
Okay,
they're
define it here. They define it specifically. Qital, meaning war in its operations, such as fighting, slaying, etc.
Right. Okay. So slaying, definitely you have to slay their enemy. You can't just slay off the body fat or cut the calories in half, you know.
See, so when the Muslims enter the enemy's country, they besiege the cities or strongholds of the infidels, it is necessary to invite them to embrace Islam, right? Mm-hmm. And if they embrace the faith, it is unnecessary to war with them, because that which was the design of the war is then obtained without war. The Prophet has said, we are directed to make war upon men until such time as they will confess there is no God but Allah, right? And they must pay the jizya, or the capitation tax. By submitting to this tax, war is terminated. So, you know, the Prophet...
So those people out there who think that, you know, Islam is all about or jihad is about self-improvement, you have to now factor in what is the jizya? You know, is that like a cheap deal?
From the Sharia, jizya is a tax. It's actually tribute. So basically, it is okay. Jizya is translated in the Sharia as punishment, right, or retribution. The proper term they use in the Sharia, in the Islamic law, is retribution. So in other words, because you are not helping them invade other countries and convert them all to Islam, you as a dhimmi, someone who's subjugated under Islam, must pay this money to fund the war effort as punishment for your non-compliance. And it says here, people will hence perceive that they are attacked for the sake of religion and not for the sake of taking their property. Do you understand? So it is possible they may be induced to agree to the call of Islam in order to save themselves from the troubles of war. Now, I'll do a final piece. If a Muslim attacks infidels without calling them to the faith, he is an offender, because this is forbidden. But yet, if he attacks them before inviting them to Islam, and he slays them, and he takes their property, neither fine, expiation, or atonement are due, because that which protects them, namely Islam, does not exist in them. So in the same manner as the slaying of the women or infant children of infidels is forbidden, but if notwithstanding a person were to slay women and children, he is not liable to a fine. Religion of peace.
Yeah.
Peace is.
Peace is.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
so
insane.
This is the Sharia. This is the final...
It's so weird. Like I know, not to go off the tangent, but Robert Spencer always had that point about when he talks about is like he was doing this speech in Australia. And he talks about, isn't it interesting how people always was screaming and raving about Islamophobia, but when you look at the hate crimes, they're actually at the bottom of the most hate crime lists. and yet Jews
Yeah.
are at the top of the list. But how is it that how often do you always hear about stories about Islamophobia, but you never hear about the real genuine threats of anti-Semitism? You know, from the and whenever anti-Semitism does come up, it's always from they won't say who the main source of it is.
Man, it's like in England, they won't release that hate crime report. You know, the one, so the grooming gang report.
Yes, they're why are they suppressing it? Why are they? It makes no sense. Oh yeah, it's racist. We can't let them know it's the origin of crime.
Yeah. So yeah, it's you know, if the infidels, upon receiving the call to Islam, neither consent to it nor agree to pay it, right? Then you make war upon them, because Allah is the destroyer of His enemies, the infidels. That's us. Attack the infidels with all manner of warlike engines. All of this is sanctified by the law. So that's Islam, and it's you know, what can I say? This is Islam.
This is Islam. That's all you could really say at the end of the day.
Now,
yeah, there's always a joke that the evil that atheists accuse Christians of is in Islam, but now it turns out the evils of both Judaism and Christianity are both Islam.
Yeah. It seems like it is Islam. It's as simple as that. You've shown enough evidence to definitely, condemn Islam as well as vindicate Judaism and Christianity. I mean, don't get me wrong, Christianity's had its ups and downs, but we've tried our best.
Agreed. I mean, look, it took 2,000 years for that Christian morality, to finally establish itself. It didn't just happen overnight. But in Islam, the morality is established by the example of Muhammad, and we are reading here what the final decision is as to what Islam is. It's all defined in the Sharia.
But if you really want the embodiment of the immorality, just compare the central figures, Jesus and Islam and Muhammad. And it's kind of a worn down joke to compare Jesus and Muhammad. But is anyone really surprised when the central theme of your religion is a 6th century, sex-craved warlord? Why are you surprised that the followers are acting that way?
Talking about sex slaves, okay, and sex crave and sex whatever, crazy warlord, it is not laudable to carry young women along with the army, either for the purpose of carnal gratification or for service. If, however, the necessity for carnal gratification be very urgent, female slaves may be taken.
But not wives. But not wives.
But not wives. Yeah. No commitments. No commitments. It's disgusting.
Yeah. No. This. Welcome to Islam. This is Islam. This is the law. And this is duplicated across multiple different Sharia manuals. I mean, I've got a bunch of them, and they all say the same thing. Jeez. There's no difference between them. They're pretty much all the same. Let me see what this one says. Any single Muslim, this is sudden jihad syndrome. Any single Muslim is empowered to make war upon the infidels, wherefore they fear him. The object of fear is the object to which to look for protection, and a single Muslim is the object of fear.
Fear. Oh boy.
Yeah. Understand? So let's see what it says. All the stuff in red are usually interesting. Let me see if I have anything here. With repentant captives, it is the choice for the Imam to slay the captives, because the Prophet Muhammad put captives to death, and also because slaying them terminates wickedness. Wickedness being not being a Muslim, worshipping other gods.
Does that say slay or flay?
Slaves. Slay. And he may make them slaves, because by enslaving them, the evil of them is remedied. Slavery is legal in Islam. It can never be abolished, because the Sharia can never, ever be abolished. Captives may either be slain or enslaved or admitted to become dhimmis. So it is not lawful for the Imam to return the captives to their own countries, as this would be strengthening the infidels against the Muslims. If captives become Muslims, let not the Imam put them to death, because the evil of them is here remedied without slaying them. Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so I don't know where the problem is with Judaism, but
well, I've spoken to you in private before, Lloyd, about the notion that some people they go so deep on the deep end of hating Jews to the point where they go past the moral event horizon, in which all their social capital, all their groups, all their friends and family have disowned them because they say, hey, we don't hate them. we're skeptical at best, but hey, we don't hate them like you do. And then eventually they get into this own bubble where all they have is the movement, all they have is the cult, all they have is the ideology. And in this case, there is no ideology but Islam in that regard.
I honestly think that this is partly inspired by Islam, whose their influence has spread, and its doctrine within the religion to hate the Jews and to hate the Christians, and people have adopted this mindset, and with maybe not knowing it, but we are doing the work of Allah to kill the Jews for the sake of Allah.
Now I have something I want to show you. If you're
sure, I'm done here. I'll just quit my screen sharing, yeah, because but that was everything from me. Hopefully I've made my point.
You've made a very good point, and I really like your work, man.
Something like this needs like nice little video editing and nice little audio and music background clips. That's what this needs.
This is the Daily Beast. This is the Daily Beast article talking about Satanism drama within the neo-Nazi group Atomwaffen. Atomwaffen is they're a terrorist organization within Texas and parts of the United States, but they are the more extreme version of it. Now, I bring this up. I'm not going to focus too much on Islam, but one of the things the people they name dropped was ONA, the Order of the Nine Angles. Now, this is where the British, the Order of the Nine Angles is a British based, but steeped in Nazism, a fringe occultist group whose literature encourages human sacrifices. The ONA champions Nazi Germany, pushes Holocaust denialism. One of the group's longest-running leaders is Anton Long, is rumored to have been a pseudonym for the known neo-Nazi David Myrat. Now, we have information about Myrat, but I wanted to go. The reason I brought this up was primarily, and I could show this to you, Luke, the Order of the Nine Angles. They talk about they use the term Nazarene. Now, yeah, that's exactly why it's stuck out to me, because I'm starting to notice a very, very interesting, intersectionality between, and I use the SJW term, intersectionality between Islam, Satanism, and white nationalism. And if we look at who David Myrat is, this should scare the living fuck out of you. David Myrat, formerly known as Abdul Abzid Abin Myrat, or Abdul al-Kahiri, is a Tunguts. He's a British-born person, but he converted to Islam. So this supposed leader of the satanic cult or whatever is a follower of Islam, or a former follower of Islam. I bring this up because I believe what was his name? Arthur Desmond, I believe. Desmond. I bring this up simply, not Arthur Desmond. It's not Ragnar Redbeard. It was a neo-Nazi who converted to Islam, and he killed his own group.
After World War II, actually during World War II, a number of Nazi generals and Nazi commanders actually converted to Islam, because they found that there was a confluence between the Nazi beliefs and the Islamic beliefs. They were very, very similar. There was a lot of overlap, and it justified a lot of their views against certain groups. Because remember, the Jews had the concept of the Untermenschen, and the Nazis, had the concept of the Untermensch, the lesser being, and in Islam, there's the concept of the Dhimmi, the lesser being, the guilty ones, the blamed. So there's a lot of similarities.
This is the neo-Nazi turned Muslim charged with killing roommates who disrespected his faith. This is a white Muslim, essentially. And we're seeing this play out before our hands.
Well, that's called Sab al-Rasul, which is to insult Islam. And yes, you are allowed to kill people. It's just Sharia law.
I find it, and then of course, you have, who could forget, Francis Parker Yockey. Now, are you familiar with Francis Parker Yockey?
No.
This is more stuff that needs to be looked into. We've been in lockdown here in San Jose, California due to the the C virus. I can't say it because YouTube will probably take this video down, if not because of the Islam and Judaism discussions, but because of the discussions of the pandemic currently going on. But Francis Parker Yockey was basically, essentially, he believed that the Jews were trying to kill the Soviets, that they were trying to kill the Soviet leadership, what they would call the doctor's plot. So what he did was he was a white nationalist as well, who aligned himself with, I believe, Islam, and more specifically, I believe it was the Egyptian president at the time, Ghassan, I believe his name is. 1 second, let's find it here. It was of a certain individual who was basically wanting to have a European Soviet Arab connection to go fight what he would perceive as American Zionism. So I've seen more and more connections here between these groups out there. There just seems to be a very, very big correlation and connection.
I would agree with you there. I mean, that's something I would agree on.
I have to do more research into this. I will probably. Oh yeah, here we go.
There's certain overlap in terms of ideology. I would agree that there's certainly something.
And there's also a historical precedent. If I could somehow show that there's a connection between these various groups out there, I think we might have a good case. Because right now we're seeing, even in the real world today, in politics, there's an overwhelming influence of occult activity within these groups. And the far right groups.
Well, if you read Hamas, if you read the Hamas Charter, if you look up the Hamas Charter and you go to Article 2, Hamas is one wing of the Muslim Brotherhood, and they discuss that the Muslim Brotherhood, part of the activities is practice of the occult.
That is interesting, because I'll tell you this: the one thing that you will always see with the occult is you'll always see individuals who are either scared or they are, looking for answers. They don't believe the mainstream. They are perfect candidates.
Let me read this briefly. Article 2, the Islamic Resistance Movement, which is the formal name of Hamas, and their relation with the Muslim Brotherhood. The Islamic Resistance Movement is a wing of the Muslim Brotherhood in Palestine. Now, they say that it is characterized by its deep understanding, its accurate comprehension, and complete embrace of all Islamic concepts, of all aspects of life, culture, creed, politics, education, society, justice, judgment, the spreading of Islam, education, art, information, science of the occult, and conversion to Islam. Because few people are aware that Islam is a Gnostic religion. It is based on Gnosticism. If you read the Sharia, they discuss it at length. The Sufis are the elite tier of Islamic scholars. All of them are mystics. They are Gnostic mystics. And and that people speak of the 4 levels of understanding of Judaism, like the Sod level, like, these secret 4 levels, which are taught as part and parcel of Judaism studies. But in Islam, there are 4 levels as well, the lowest of which is Ibadah, which is level for the masses, the basic level of understanding for the masses. And then you get 3 other levels, which are secret. This is not common knowledge for Muslims. And the 2nd level, the 3rd level, the 4th level are all for higher levels of Muslim imams. And the major level, the 3rd and 4th level, are for the Sufis.
Interesting. That is interesting.
So
I only bring this up.
Gnosticism. So Gnosticism is Satanism.
Yeah, Gnosticism. Well, Gnosticism. It's one thing to look into things and have like a good historical understanding what people believed at the time, why they believed it, and what have you. But some of the Gnosticism stuff, like, have you heard of? I believe his name is. Let's see if I can find it here. Let's see if I can find it. Eric. Oh, yeah.
I'm not seeing anything on the screen though. It's just the background that's showing up.
Yeah, I think. Luke, do you have control of that for a second?
Yes, I'm looking for something to post.
I've posted a few. I posted a few links in the chat.
Yeah, well, I showed those. I'm just looking for something more visually.
Yeah, there's not much on the chat that I'm seeing.
For whatever reason, for whatever reason, YouTube is having issues in regards to. I don't know if I've been shadow banned or if it's just because of the pandemic here in California, but a lot of people working from home, Lloyd.
Yeah, no. So look, I mean, we're on lockdown here in Warsaw as well. Yeah, I can give this like another 15 minutes tops because
That's fine. That's fine. We're gonna end it like right here if you'd like. Luke, is there any final thoughts?
I have 2 clips to share.
Okay.
Sure.
In order to expose British terror groups like Al-Mujahideen and supporters of Sharia, Glenn Genvy collaborated with Jonathan Galt and acquired recordings of the group's meetings held in London mosques. The tapes reveal open incitement to violence and terror, in particular from Abu Hamza al-Masri, who calls upon followers to kill the kuffar, or non-Muslims.
He's talking about the word kufar, that if you're not a Muslim and you live in a Muslim land, you are like a cow. That's his word.
You see, the Islamic rule, if a Catholic goes into a Muslim country and he's walking by, he's like a cowboy, and anybody could take him.
Yeah.
And lastly, I would like to share this little clip as a.
And that's orthodox. That's not radical. That's normal.
Yeah. And as a last note, I'd like to give thanks to Lloyd for his wonderful work here with this little audio clip here. If I could just play it here. Here we go.
It was nice of you to invite us along.
Your husband's got a good heart, Lois, but his views on Judaism are a little misguided. I'd consider it a mitzvah to educate him a little.
That is, well, that's good. Educate them. Educate people. That's one of the things that's going to be a key to protecting yourself against a lot of this propaganda, because a lot of it is propaganda. Some of it's misinformation. Some of it's disinformation. But one of the reasons we have, why I hold freedom of speech in such high regard, is so we can have people come in and correct the information.
Although I have a terrible suspicion that if we start explaining these things about the Torah, we'll be dismissed as Zionists.
Yeah, and that's
of course. Of course. I mean, darn it. Look, I'm not even Catholic, but for instance, I get accused of being Catholic, Jewish, a bunch of things. For instance, if you do some research into Martin Luther, for instance, people say that they talk about the Apocrypha. The proper name is really the Deuterocanonical scriptures, because those scriptures were regarded as part of the Catholic canon from the 3rd century onwards. And they say the Catholics have added books to the Bible. No, Martin Luther and the Protestants removed books from the Bible. They're not apocryphal, which means like false. They are deuterocanonical, secondary canon. So if you start to look at Martin Luther, he hated Jews, and he was a liar of note himself. He was a serial liar of note, because the stories that he was telling about Jews were also false. So Martin Luther was not a good man. Right. He also had his own particular agenda. He wanted to be part of the royalty. He wanted to be part of the nobility. So he was also trying to serve them and to bring down the Catholic Church so that he could win favors. There was lots. Once you start looking into Martin Luther's life, you realize he was not a good man. And towards the end of his life, apparently, he started to have regrets for what he did.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't he the guy who basically, again, this is a Catholic here, and my audio video show guy is Protestant, but again, he was the guy who was so scared by a thunderstorm, apparently, he vowed that he would convert to Catholicism if God let him live, I believe.
Although it is speculated that he probably did that because he wanted to get out of law school.
Yeah, so there you go. You're dealing with somebody who's sort of a huckster.
Yeah, but also the same kind of stories I see about the Jews, I see about, and about the Catholic Church. I kind of see the same kind of stories, because I've never met anyone who hates the Catholic Church and discusses it in the most derogatory terms, who actually knows anything about Catholic doctrine. And what's interesting is, I live now in a Catholic country, right, which is like 98% Catholic. And so the church that I go to is Catholic. And what you learn is that people say, well, they worship the Mother Mary, or they worship idols. And you go to Catholic Church here, because that's the only one I can go to. And you see no evidence of any of these claims that people are making about the Catholic Church. Now, that's not to say that I don't have, there used to be a joke, is the Pope a Catholic? That's no longer a joke. That's a serious question.
With this current Pope, it's kind of hard to ignore, even if you were a Catholic.
Yeah, that's a very serious question. Is the Pope a Catholic? Well, we're not sure anymore. So yeah, and there are problems in the Vatican. We know that there are problems within the Catholic Church in Rome, certainly, and in America, certainly. There are some serious problems. So we're aware of that. But destroying the church is not a benefit to anyone, because then you need to repair the church, not destroy it. And yeah, but I see that people who basically talk smack about the Catholic Church know nothing about it, just like people who talk smack about the Jews know nothing about the Talmud.
Yep. And I think a lot of this, this is where you have to ask yourself. I'm going to close up here in a second. We have to ask: is it ignorance, laziness, or malicious intent? And
All of the above.
it varies.
Yeah.
Some of it is malicious, some of it isn't.
I think a lot of the malice really ultimately stems from Islam.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, the malice probably is from Islam. A lot of it is probably just not knowing and groupthink, madness and crowd, so to speak.
Well, why do people attack the Jews who actually birthed Jesus, raised him, and all of the apostles were Jews? They will try to deny that Jesus was even a Jew. They'll even try to deny that the Jews are Jews, right? But Islam is given a pass for its incredible hatred of Jews, Jesus, and Christianity.
I wouldn't know why. I don't know why. I mean, everyone has their own reasons. There's no way to know for certain. There's no way without asking somebody.
Not to make it too modern day political, it's probably easier to blame the Jews for the same reason it's easier to blame white people in America for all the evils of the world.
Because they won't chop your head off.
Yeah, they won't chop your head off. Again, everyone has their reasons, but ultimately, at the end of the day, is the reasons based on facts, logic, and reason and evidence, or is it based on just something you heard on the internet? And Lloyd, I think, has done a very, very good job, along with Jan and Sonia and Fabius. His name is Fabius. Yes, they've done a very good job in exposing the actual evidence of what is the actual sources, the primary citations of why Islam is bad. We can show you why. It's not just an opinion now, it's actually a fact. And law. Why it's law, exactly. It's a law for them. And why Judaism and Christianity, have been, misinterpreted in a lot of ways.
Misrepresented, deliberately.
Misrepresented, yeah. So, yeah. All right, guys. I think we're done here. Any final thoughts? Anything for you, Lloyd?
Oh, no, good. Hopefully people will come to my channel, start looking at some of the videos. Everything is very, very carefully sourced. I provide all of the links, the citations. I even provide downloads to all of the books, links to all of the locations. Everything is visible on screen. Everyone can read it. So I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm providing everything so people can follow up for themselves. And hope they'll subscribe and follow the work that I'm doing. And it'll be nice to come back if you have specific questions. We can talk about specific topics I can prepare. And yeah, my question is: any final thoughts from you and from Luke? Your thoughts on this? Because I mean, we had you had some interesting comments the last time we spoke. You both mentioned you believed much of the stuff, but that what I taught you had convinced you that yes, this needed to be relooked at. Any thoughts from you, Luke? Did I teach you anything new today that was worthwhile?
Well, I kind of knew about Islam. Back in the day when 9/11 first happened, I was watching all the material and all the videos, like those videos I shared about Islam. I've had these hints about it, but the conflation of Islam and Judaism that people make is something so jaw-dropping, in your face, absurd. It's amazing that no one's ever tried to correct this. It just blows me away.
Yeah, maybe it's time. Maybe that's a good direction for me to head in, to try to separate the two. Because it's interesting, people will try to claim that the Jews created Islam, and then at the same time you have another group claiming that the Catholic Church created Islam. And when you read the Islamic doctrine, it hates both of them and wants to destroy them.
You're both just horrible. I can totally see that. But in any case, be good to one another, take care of one another, and remember, ladies and gentlemen, saving the West is a side quest, but educating yourself that's a full-time job. And I think yeah, that's pretty much where we are at right now. Let's see if I could just shut it off. Give me 1 second.
Cool, man. Thank you.